Okay, what I'm going to show here is basically all the adjustments that can be made to this baler. Why this baler makes the bales that it does. Give more of the reasons why I bought this baler. I mean, this is just the most simple, basic baler you can get. Now, what I found out last year, and I was wrong what I had always thought, there's a company called M&W. I don't know if they're still in business or not. I got a brush hog right over there. You can see the hitch of it there. It's got a busted gearbox in it. I should scrap it or take it to the wholesale and see if I can get 50 bucks out of it. But they made balers, brush hogs. Oh, I don't know what all else. They had several things. And last year when that bearing went out on this baler, and I was talking to Messick's down there trying to figure out the parts, they actually had to contact Germany to get the parts manual for this book because this baler is so old. And talking to the parts guy, that's where I found out that M&W made these balers for Krone. So technically this is an M&W baler, I guess. I had a neighbor that had an M&W baler, and it was the same frickin' thing, other than it was this yeah, it's all rusted now, but it was a purplish red color. That's kind of faded out there now. But like most manufacturers, like I say, it was a M&W baler that they put Krone sheet metal on. Basically, it's all it is. So the reason I bought this baler in 1994. If I remember right, it was $12,500, brand new. This is the most least option, basic baler. You can see it's got pickup is only as wide as the chamber. Now the neighbor down the road, he bought one of these. Well, probably 4 or 5 years after I did, because he had a Vermeer silage special baler. He was making baleage, and he spent 4 hours or 2 hours, whatever it was at the time. It was over more than an hour to make 4 bales. He couldn't get that hay to roll. Kept slipping the belts. He was baling way too green to begin with, so he wanted to know if I could go bale it. I went down there and I baled 14 bales in like 45, 50 minutes. The next year he had one of these, but at that time, Krone might have been making them at that time, but they came out with a newer model, and there might have been an option at the time, but he got what was called the Classic. It had 2 foot wider on each side of the chamber. Other than that, chamber was the same, twine was the same. Everything was the same, just sat up a little bit different, just option a little bit different. And like I say, it's simple baler. It's your PTO shaft. Comes back, there's a gearbox here, shaft that runs over here. And let me get this off. And my latch went to hell. This is all stripped out in here, so now I gotta use a strap to hold this in. But the shaft drives back to here, to the bearing that went out last year. This shaft goes across, and this drives the chain. And this chain just goes around the outside and around in here. So this is all open. Off the shaft on the other side drives the roller that's down in the bottom here, which drives your pickup head. That's it. 2 chains, gearbox, and the main chain. So it's all just simple. Now, how this baler works, like I said, I showed this here the other day. These are these cylinders, and somebody made a comment about them. From what I've had one of these go out, and like I said, when they go out, it's lost all its pressure, and this will pull in and out real easy. It hooks this latch. Now the adjustment for this baler should be this gap between this pin and here is 3/8 of an inch. So you loosen this up and move your rod until you got 3/8 of an inch here. Then what you do is you pry this chamber open and prop it open. You take a screwdriver, pry bar, whatever, pry this back till this pin contacts that. Then you come up here, and this is the whole mechanism right in here. This cable, this is where you make your adjustment at. But you adjust these. I'll show it better on this side. There's these 2 needles here. These should be adjusted right at 0 when that chamber's back against that latch. So you adjust both them. And then that's all your adjustment for how this packs the bale. Like I said, I mentioned the other day, I don't know if this is, I don't think this is progressive. I think this is just one tension on here, you know, whatever pressure's in that cylinder, and it just pulls out and keeps tension in there. The more you put in there, the more it's packing the outside of the bales. Okay, and that's all on that. Then when you start baling, you bale along, and you start watching these needles. I'll go on this side because it shows up that everything's paint's fading. As you're baling, these needles will do this. They'll work their way up. Now, if this bale's up to 1 and that one's up to 0, then you move over to that side until that needle catches up. And you go back and forth. This is what gauges how dense your bales are. Now, this is where you're supposed to stop. This is where I stop. So another thing I remember on this baler. This baler was made 30 years ago. It's not packing to the pressures or designed that the newer balers are. It makes a dense bale, but it's not going to make as dense as the other bales. Now, this could be part of the problem why I'm getting these puffed out bales. Usually it does make a better bale if you tie it off here, but you can get more hay in there, and stopping here, they're more prone to sagging down and stuff. So technically I'm overpacking it, but I think these are a little bit out of adjustment too. I did adjust them here about 2 years ago and it didn't really help make any difference. I still gotta overdrive it. And then, I showed this here the other day, when you start tying, you pull this rope. Just before you're ready to come to stop, you pull this rope. It pulls this mechanism, it's this wheel against a wheel that's on the gearbox, and it starts feeding this in. Once that twine gets in there and catches the hay, that's why you want to stop. Start it just before you're ready to stop so it gets into the hay. You release the rope, and this is what drives your knotter, just the twine pulling through here. It drives this pulley, which drives this, which is driving your needles. And then there's 2 gaps in the back there, or 2 pipes where the twine is. And the needles move in, catch the twine, move out, stop, come back in. And when it reaches the knife here, cuts the twine, and it all stops. And then you just eject the bale. Now this is what they call a mini stop, because technically it never worked to my satisfaction anyhow, but that pan at the bottom is actually a ramp that the bale rolls off. It never clears the door like it should, especially if you're on a little bit of an incline. But what you're supposed to be able to do is just start driving, drop the bale. The hay's supposed to accumulate on that plate, and it should be up here. I've never monkeyed adjusting it. I don't think it's going to help anything, but that's what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to catch the hay, and as this chamber comes down, it'll kind of scoop the hay in, and you're not supposed to technically need to stop and back up. I've just gotten so much in the habit over the years, that's all I do. I'll back up, dump the bale, start pulling the head, drop the door, and go. And like I say, there's them cylinders on each side. Oh, another fun fact I started to talk about on these cylinders. There is a guy in the area. He's retired here now. He's from New Zealand or the Netherlands or something originally. He moved out here, bought a farm. He raised beef cattle. And this is what he told the dealer, and the dealer told me. Now, in the United States, you can only buy them cylinders. If you were over in Europe, Germany, them areas where they sell these balers, you can get them rebuilt. He knew somebody, a friend of his probably from wherever he was from, that he sent one over there or whatever, got it rebuilt. At the time mine went out, and we're talking probably 15 years ago, that it was like $260 or whatever. Now they're probably like $500, $600. But Yeah, in the United States you got to buy them. Overseas you can get them rebuilt. Now as far as the twine here, now the adjustment I made here the other day with them, I didn't think it'd really make a whole lot of difference. My only thought and goal when I tightened them down some is so there's more tension here that would pull the twine tighter on the bale and maybe wouldn't have all that poofiness. I didn't think it would make much difference. I'm more worried of putting too much tension and not feeding it in there, but it seemed to go all right. And the only other thing you can do is you got this triple pulley, and depending which one, I forget which way you go. I think it's a smaller that runs faster. I never can remember for sure. I've always run it on this one, but basically this puts 9 wraps onto a bale of hay. That's what it averages. I've used these once or twice. I'm pretty sure it's this one that puts less on, because I ran some sisal twine through this 2 years ago. It wasn't a very good job. Didn't work very well. But it was a heavier twine, so I didn't need to put as much twine on. So that's what I ran. And it averaged like 7 wraps, 9 wraps, 11 wraps. So that's the only thing you can do to this knotter. Because like I say, it's feeding the twine in at a certain rate, which drives, well, it's either going to feed the twine faster or slower, which makes this go faster. So either the needles are going slower or, faster in. Then the other adjustment was these pins I've talked about before. Like I say, all them do is keep the twine from going clear out to the end. And like I say, I've never had to touch them. I moved them in because I think mainly what the problem is, what happens is there's so many variables. Like I say, with the density of the grass, it's a lot different with this nice fine soft stuff than you get some of this stuff that's got a stem to it and gets tougher. Everything packs different. And I think most of my problem is hay is so fine and short that as the twine's pulling in, instead of being caught under like 4 or 5 pieces of twine, binding it down, it's only 1 or 2, and then it lets it spring up because the ends ain't bound down. It's not tied together as much. So like I say, some of this stuff, there's really not much you're going to do. The only thing I could do is put more twine on it, which it really ain't going to help much. It's helping me more getting the twine to stay on the bale instead of the twine rolling off where I got more flapping in the end. The middle, because that's when you're moving the bales, when you're doing this, and it's looser on the end, you got your bale doing this. If it's still bound up in the middle, it might sift some out, but you don't have that movement of the hay shaking it out either. So, like I say, it's all just vanity. But the biggest thing, and I know it, the biggest thing that's causing me problems making a nice shaped squared bale is that hay rake right there. Because the way these things rake hay. Because this picks up the hay and starts rolling it. And it basically makes a big tube, a coil. And what happens, nobody drives like they're supposed to. Everybody wants to get it done. Yeah, I know I drive in too fast to make a decent windrow. So instead of just keep rolling it into a nice roll, it's kind of flipping it over and some sprays out. And that's another reason why I'm getting these mist spots on windrows. But what happens is when it does that, you got one side of that windrow, because it's been rolled over, you got a lot more hay on this half of the windrow than you do over here because it's been sprayed out and it's not continuously coiled. So you got unevenness in your windrow. So no matter how you drive on that baler, say you're driving here and you got this windrow it's heavier on this side of the windrow. Well, when you come to this side, you're putting a lot more hay on this half of the bale. But when you drive on this side, that heavier part's still in the middle. You still got all the light stuff here. So usually you don't get as much on one side of the bale, and it ends up more in the middle, and that's where I'm getting that bulge. You know, nobody can drive consistently and even and everything. When that happens, yeah, I should drive on this side of the baler, which I do. I mean, I follow the needles, but you still got more going into that center of that bale than what's able to build up on the outside when that windrow's like that. Now, if you take some of these other rakes, they got these rotary ones, single wheel, double wheel, whatever, they'll bring two into one. It's got the skirt on the outside, and you're raking up against that skirt. You can set that so you're pushing more the hay in there, and you're just raking it sideways. So you're grabbing a whole wad, and instead of flipping it over, you're just bunching it up. And then you can set that, and that's the ideal thing. To make a nice bale is to have a windrow that's the same density all the way across, and then as wide as that chamber is. And then you don't have to swerve, and it'll make a better bale. Same way with these big V rakes, because you got the V here and the V here. You're raking everything to the center, and it's pushing it all together, coming out to that center point. You have a lot more even density across some windrows. So the rake is making a difference on how this bale is shaping up in here. And then I drive a lot slower than anybody else. I bale fourth gear with that Ford regardless. And just a steady 4 mile an hour, 4.2, whatever it is. Because there's no need to rush for the amount I'm baling. It's not like I'm baling 300 bales in a day. Got 75 acres to cover. I got 8, 10, 12, maybe 20 acres at the most. And you get in the bale, because that's the other thing that affects how this baler forms. And again, this baler's 30 years old. It's a lot different technology now. These newer balers are more designed to go faster, designed to pack tighter, to make better bales and all that. But how fast. Now, this is what the dealer told me one time. When you go to a farm show and they're doing baler demonstrations in the field, you can tell whether they're trying to make a nice shaped bale or how fast they can bale. If they're, I'll put it this way, how much hay they can get into a bale or how fast they can bale. Because if they're driving at a sane speed, because the slower you go, the more times that bale turns, the more hay you will get into a bale. And I've seen it, because that's the other reason why I overpack these bales. Because once I start packing or start tying, just sitting here, it takes about 25, 30 seconds at the most. It's usually about 20, 25 seconds. You can see this needle going down. And it's not the twine pulling that bale together. It's the more times it's turning and it's still compressing. So that's why I usually go up here, and by the time I tie a bale, I'm usually down in here, and it makes a lot better shaped bale. Now, if they're trying to show how fast they can bale, they're flying through the field, and nowadays things are a little bit different, but back then 90% of this equipment, 95%, was 540 PTO. I don't know who told him, it was a manufacturer, that he actually, what he said was, if you go there and try to buy that baler they're demonstrating, they will not sell it to you. You got to pay attention what they have here. Because some of these manufacturers will put, this is a 540, they'll put 1,000 RPM end on this, run that baler at 1,000 RPM, so it's clocking faster, so the bale's turning more, so they're getting more into it. So, there's, like I say, all these little tricks you kind of got to watch on this stuff, because they screw with you. So, what the hell else was I going to say about this? It's like I say, this is just the most simple, basic baler. If you just want something to make hay with. You know, if you're selling, yeah, you want, oh, that's the other thing, net wrap. That's the other option you can have. Back then, it was an option on these balers, but guys were still using sisal twine back then. Net wasn't that popular. Because net, well, I can buy a ball of this twine. It cost me, or bale, two balls. I believe it's $33 this year. That, at that setting, covers roughly 70 to 75 bales. Net wrap, so you figure that. Take 70, or take, say it was $35. 70 bales, it's 50 cents a bale in twine I got. Net wrap, I don't know, they used to be up around $300 for a roll net wrap, but I believe it would cover 300 bales. So you're about $1 a bale. You figure it out, yeah, you'll save 50 cents, because net will shed water better than twine. Twine has no shedding effect, but you will save 50 cents worth of hay over doing it. I mean, no doubt twine is the best way, or net's the best way to go. But it was an option on these balers at the time. I want to say it was like a $3,000 option or something. It was available for this, but the dealer, he'd only get them if you ordered them at the time, because it was something fairly new at that time too. And so, but if I was to buy another baler, and I really wanted to here a couple of years ago, and that's a good thing I didn't, but New Holland has, and I can't remember the number now, but they have a baler that is chambered exactly like this. It's a fixed chamber, chain. It's basically this baler, and I don't want to say it's I don't want to, and it might be, maybe Krone's making them for New Holland, I don't know for sure. But it was chambered just like this baler, almost identical. You know, it's a lot more updated. And I wanted that net twine and all that. But that's what I would do if I ever did need to get another baler or want another baler. So I'm sure I'm forgetting something I was going. Actually, I'm trying to go over all the questions somebody was asking and show a little bit more about this, and I can't think now here. But simple, I mean, it's been a reliable baler. Other than that bearing last year, the bearing on that comes out here to this gear off the gearbox, that one was replaced the second or third year I had this baler under warranty. It was a recall. Never had a problem with that, but I don't know why they changed it. Because they changed it to the bearing that I put in here, the cast flange instead of the split flanged. So why they didn't change any of these other ones? So that never stopped me. I've had to rebearing. Well, I had to rebearing this and a bearing on that knotter at one time. That wasn't no downtime. The biggest downtime I had is, and it's stupid, the shaft that comes out of this gearbox for this pulley that drives the knotter, there's only a stub out of the gearbox like that. It broke at the keyway. I had to put a whole new shaft in that. But that was way back, probably 5th or 6th year I had the baler. I forget, well, this bearing went out one other time. And I think that was the one that cost me the major time. It was at that time that I pulled that bearing and I seen a grease fitting. And I'm standing there thinking, I don't remember ever greasing this thing. I remember seeing a grease fitting there. So I went a couple of years without greasing that bearing and it finally went out. And I've replaced that one other time. And at that time the baler's down. I mean, I did 200 bales of hay in 2 days down at my cousin's. I had just about every stitch of hay down there. I ended up borrowing the neighbor's baler. The other one that Krone like this one. I baled more hay with his baler that year than I baled with mine. But like I say, other than that, a couple chains here and there. I've had to replace these hoses here. Yeah, I replaced all the hydraulic hoses here just a couple years ago. I do have problems with the cylinders here that pick up the pickup head. They leak down a little bit, but It's not something I'm worried about. So once you set them in the field, you leave them. But that's about it. I've talked way too long here. But yeah, like I say, I mean, I don't want to say I'm expecting too much out of this baler, making nice bales. But like, you just gotta remember, this has got some age to it. It's not what it used to be, but it still does a good job. And most of the problems are how you shape the hay and the type of hay you're baling. And I'll just show this. I'm not exactly sure where these go, but they came with the baler. They go in the chamber here somewhere. I'd have to get a book out. I've never needed these. These are for if you're baling, I think mainly straw. It will get to, forget what it was, what you bale. But there's something that you will could bale with this, and then maybe it's corn stalks, I don't know. But because of the stems and everything, and the way it forms in that chamber, the bale won't come out, or has a hard time coming out. What these do, they bolt somewhere on, whether onto the door or onto the chamber or somewhere, and they round that outside corner, or keeps it packed into the corner, and it helps to let the, so there's not as much tension on the bale, and helps the bale roll out of the chamber. I forget what it was with your bale. But well, like I said, I guess I rambled on and on enough. But yeah, like I say, that's just some of the reasons why the bales are shaping the way they are. Like I say, I know what some of the problems are. Some of the problems ain't that big a deal. I ain't worried about. I would like to make a nicer bale, stack better and everything. But overall, for the most part, there is really nothing you can do. You know, there's very much you can change to have a real effect on something. So I guess I'm going to leave it at that. This is going to be way too long. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you up with you later.